Look into the eyes of another. What do you truly see reflected there? A spark of the divine, a unique facet of consciousness, or perhaps something else entirely. Tonight, we step onto a path less traveled, one illuminated by the faint glow of Sabiduría ancestral and shadowed by Misterios, occultos that challenge the very fabric of our perceived reality. Have you ever felt a strange, inexplicable disconnect from someone who appears perfectly normal? An interaction that leaves you feeling unseen or energetically drained, as if you've been conversing with an empty vessel? This sensation is not merely a social awkwardness. It is a ripple emanating from a profound and often unsettling truth, a truth whispered in forgotten philosophies and guarded within the folds of textos, prohibidos. We are about to explore a concept that sits at the heart of ancient spiritual thought, occult systems, and the very frontiers of consciousness science, the notion of soulless beings. This isn't some recent invention of speculative fiction. It echoes through history, re-emerging in modern times under labels like organic portals. The controversial Cassiopeian experiment, for instance, brought this idea into sharper focus. For many, suggesting that within the complex tapestry of humanity, a significant portion may function essentially as sophisticated biological machines, outwardly indistinguishable. They walk, talk, emote, and navigate the social world with uncanny accuracy. Yet, according to these teachings, they lack the individualized, self-aware soul essence that defines the spiritual seeker. This radical perspective finds fertile ground in the rich soil of ancient insights. Cast your mind back to the Christian Gnostics, who spoke of malevolent archons, entities that constructed a false material world and created imitations of human beings, specifically designed to trap or siphon the true spiritual souls. This idea of a created, less than fully conscious inhabitant resonates deeply. Look eastward to streams within Vedanta and Buddhism, where the nature of consciousness, illusion, and the transcendent self are dissected with profound rigor traditions that offer frameworks for understanding varied levels of awareness and being. Even in the digital age, the simulation argument prompts us to consider if all characters within a complex simulation need possess the same depth of self-awareness as the primary players. These parallels are not accidental. They are threads of a common, hidden narrative about the fundamental difference in modes of existence within this reality construct. Understanding this possibility is not about judgment. It is a critical tool for the journey of Illuminica spiritual. It is about discernment, about refining your inner sight through a profound process of alchemia interior, enabling you to perceive the subtle energetic realities that lie beneath the surface. Interaction with these beings, if this concept holds truth, is fundamentally different on an energetic level. It speaks to the flow, or lack thereof, of authentic energia cosmica between individuals. How then do we begin to recognize these distinctions? What are the subtle yet persistent signs that, once observed, cannot be unseen? They are not always overt. Often, they are patterns of behavior, absence of depth, and a particular quality, or lack thereof, of presence. In the coming moments, we will delve into the 9 key indicators, clues woven into the fabric of everyday interaction that, when viewed through the lens of this Sabiduría ancestral, begin to paint a startlingly clear picture. This knowledge is potent, perhaps unsettling, but essential for navigating your own path and safeguarding your energetic sovereignty. If this resonates with you, if the call to understand the deeper mysterious occultos of existence stirs something within your soul, please take a moment to show your support. Like this video to amplify this hidden wisdom. Share your initial thoughts and feelings in the comments below. The exploration of consciousness is a shared journey. And most importantly, subscribe and ring that notification bell, for we are just beginning to peel back the layers. The signs await. We stand now at the threshold of a concept that for many dwells in the shadowy periphery of consciousness. The notion of what some contemporary esoteric traditions term organic portals, or perhaps more starkly, soulless beings. This is not a judgment, but a proposed energetic classification, a descriptor for those forms which, while outwardly appearing human in every conceivable way, are said to lack a certain fundamental spark, a connection to the deeper currents of Illuminica spiritual that define the individuated, evolving soul. To grasp this, we must reach back into the annals of Sabiduria Ancestral, into the whisperings found in fragments of Gnostic Gospels or certain Hermetic tracts, texts sometimes deemed textos prohibidos for their challenging perspectives on human nature and creation. These ancient whispers spoke not of a single uniform humanity, but of differing types or roots, some possessing an intrinsic connection to the divine pleroma, others tied primarily to the material or psychic realms. The concept of the Hylic, individual, focused purely on the physical or the psychic, governed by the mind and emotions, but lacking the pneumatic spark, the spiritual breath, resonates with the modern idea of a being fully functional within the earthly and intellectual spheres, yet perhaps devoid of that direct line to higher consciousness, to the very source of authentic energia cosmica that fuels genuine spiritual growth. Consider this. If consciousness is a spectrum, could there exist beings who populate the lower frequencies, flawlessly mirroring human behavior, thought patterns, and emotions, yet operating without the internal engine of an individuated soul, navigating its unique path of alchemia interior towards spiritual awakening? These beings, according to this esoteric view, are not inherently evil, but are seen as empty vessels, extensions of a collective, perhaps even planetary, consciousness or energetic matrix, perfectly adapted to the cycles of the material world, but lacking the internal imperative for transcendent evolution. They are, in essence, flawless mimicry, lacking the original source code of a unique spiritual identity. This is one of the most profound mysterios occultos, challenging our deeply held beliefs about universal spiritual potential. If such beings exist, their origin remains veiled in cosmic enigma. Are they a default human template, a necessary component of the material plane's architecture, or something else entirely? The Sabiduria Ancestral hints that the vast majority might fall into this category, making the path of the soul-infused individual a rarity, a deviation from a norm designed for existence within the material illusion, rather than transcendence from it. This perspective is unsettling, perhaps even frightening, for it demands we look at our relationships, our societies, and even ourselves through a dramatically different lens. How does one distinguish the genuine spiritual light from the most convincing imitation? This question leads us directly to the subtle signatures. The observable patterns that proponents of this concept suggest are the telltale signs of these organic portals. Signs that, once understood, recalibrate your perception of reality itself. And so, how do we begin to discern these subtle ripples in the fabric of shared reality? Proponents of this concept, drawing from threads of Sabiduria Ancestral woven into various occult systems and textos prohibidos, suggest looking for specific patterns, not of malevolence, but of an almost perfect, yet ultimately shallow reflection. Imagine a mirror that captures every outward detail, but possesses no internal depth. These beings, it is posited, excel at mimicry of emotion, of social expectation, of conventional success. They can navigate the material world with remarkable ease, often achieving positions of influence, precisely because they are so attuned to its frequencies, so free from the internal friction and existential angst that often plagues those on a path of genuine Illuminica spiritual. Look closer. They suggest, and you might perceive a certain lack of authentic spontaneity, a reliance on programmed responses, an inability to grasp concepts that transcend the purely rational or concrete unless framed within acceptable, pre-approved narratives. True abstract thought, deep symbolic interpretation beyond rote learning, the struggle with profound ethical dilemmas that challenge the ego. These are said to be the hallmarks of an individuated spiritual spark, and potentially absent or underdeveloped in the organic portal. Their creativity might be imitative rather than innovative, their empathy a learned behavior rather than an intrinsic resonance with another's being. They fit the mold perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. This isn't about judgment. It's about energetic recognition, a refined sense developed through the process of alchumia interior. The ancient Gnostics, for instance, spoke of different categories of humans. The Hylics rooted solely in matter, perhaps an echo of this concept, distinct from the psychics or pneumatics, who possessed a nascent or developed spiritual principle. These are some of the mysterios occultos hinted at in veiled language across epochs. The challenge lies in the sophistication of the mimicry. Because these beings are deeply connected to the collective consciousness of the physical plane, perhaps even acting as conduits for a baseline energia cosmica devoid of individual spirit, they can reflect back what we expect to see. Their presence serves a function within the grand design, perhaps anchoring certain material realities or acting as energetic processors within the planetary field. But for those seeking transcendence, recognizing this distinction is crucial. It changes the dynamic of interaction, the nature of communication, and helps to understand why certain conversations, certain explorations of deeper meaning, feel like speaking into an echo chamber, or worse, are actively, if unconsciously, undermined or ridiculed. This awareness, while unsettling, is a vital key for the soul's journey. It requires us to refine our own energetic perception, to trust our inner knowing beyond external appearance or social validation. It leads us to ask, what is the true source of the human experience? Is the soul a universal birthright, or a rare and precious cultivation? And if some are merely sophisticated biological machines, what role do they play in the larger unfolding of cosmic consciousness? And what does their prevalence tell us about the challenges faced by those striving for genuine spiritual awakening? This path of discernment opens a door to further mysterios occultos, revealing layers of reality previously hidden, not by concealment, but by our own lack of perception, urging us to look beyond the surface and into the very fabric of the energetic reality we inhabit. This probing into the nature of being itself naturally leads us to contemplate the hidden forces and esoteric principles that shape our world. This probing into the nature of being itself naturally leads us to contemplate the hidden forces and esoteric principles that shape our world, taking us deep into the currents of sabiduria ancestral that have long whispered of these very distinctions. This isn't a modern idea, born of recent speculation. Look back through the annals of history, peel back the layers of dogma, and you'll find echoes of this understanding in nearly every significant esoteric tradition. Consider the Gnostics, those ancient seekers whose insights were deemed so threatening they were hunted and their textos prohibidos buried beneath the sands of time, only to resurface in places like Nag Hammadi. They spoke of different kinds of human beings, the Hylics, purely material, trapped in the physical world; the psychics, possessing a soul but still bound by fate and conventional thought; and the pneumatics, who carried a divine spark, capable of gnosis, direct spiritual knowledge leading to liberation. This isn't about judgment, but classification based on inherent spiritual capacity or lack thereof. It suggests a fundamental difference in energetic composition, a variation in the capacity to hold and integrate energia cosmica. And what of the Hermetic traditions, the heirs to the wisdom of Thoth and Hermes Trismegistus? Their texts, often veiled in complex symbolism and forming the basis of much of Western esotericism and alchemia, also speak of a great work, not just the transformation of lead into gold outwardly, but the profound alchemy interior, the process of refining the lower self to reveal the divine consciousness within. But who is capable of this work? Only those who possess the seed of gold, the spiritual principle yearning for Illumina Ka spiritual. This inner spark, this capacity for spiritual awakening, is depicted in various symbolisms across cultures. The pearl in the oyster, the buried treasure, the philosopher's stone itself. These ancient currents of knowledge, often relegated to mysterios occultos, suggest that the journey of the soul is not a universal given, but a specific path requiring a particular inner constitution and conscious effort. They hint that not everyone experiences reality through the same spiritual lens, or indeed, any spiritual lens at all, beyond the confines of the material and the mundane. This wasn't about inherent worth, but about inherent nature, a crucial distinction lost in many modern, flattened spiritual narratives. Examining these historical connections forces a profound re-evaluation. If the ancients, across diverse cultures and philosophical systems, spoke of different types of human beings, based on their connection to the divine or their capacity for spiritual evolution, what does that tell us about the reality we inhabit today? Were these classifications based on keen energetic observation, on insights gained through practices that awaken dormant senses? Were they attempting to explain the seemingly inexplicable differences in human consciousness, empathy, and the drive towards transcendence? This exploration into historical and philosophical connections is not merely an academic exercise. It is a key part of understanding the landscape upon which the soul's battle for liberation takes place. It provides context for the resistance one often meets on the path, the feeling of being a stranger in a strange land. It brings us face to face with the possibility that the challenges to Illumina Ka spiritual are not solely internal or external obstacles, but also a function of the very composition of the collective human field, influencing the flow and reception of Energia Cosmica. It begs the question, how have these ancient insights, these hidden classifications and practices, been preserved and perhaps weaponized throughout history? Who were the keepers of this knowledge, and how did they navigate a world where few understood the true nature of the game? This leads us to investigate the clandestine currents that have carried this wisdom, or fragments of it, through the ages. The keepers of secrets, the navigators of the hidden currents. Indeed, the flow of Sabiduria Ancestral is rarely a clear river. More often, it's a subterranean stream, diverted and filtered through ages of suppression and misinterpretation. Among the most compelling, and often most suppressed, of these streams is that which flows from the wellsprings of Gnosticism. These early mystical offshoots of Christianity, often declared heretical and their texts burned or buried, becoming, in essence, textos prohibidos, offered a cosmological vision startlingly relevant to our inquiry. They spoke not of a benevolent, all-powerful creator of this material world, but of a lesser, ignorant deity, the demiurge, who fashioned a counterfeit reality, a prison of matter designed to trap the divine sparks, the true souls. And within this prison, according to various Gnostic schools, were inhabitants of different orders. There were the pneumatics, the spiritual ones, possessing the divine spark, often feeling alien here. There were the psychics, possessing a soul, but not the full spiritual spark, capable of faith, but perhaps not direct gnosis. And then they hinted at the Hylics, beings tied solely to matter, lacking the spiritual spark entirely, perhaps even lacking the psychic soul as we understand it. Creatures of the demiurge's flawed creation, perhaps even constructs designed to mimic true humanity, to patrol the edges of the prison, or simply filling the space as animated husks, lacking genuine inner light or the capacity for true Illumina Ka spiritual, the Gnostic archons. Those cosmic wardens serving the demiurge were said to not only build the material cage, but also manipulate human affairs, sowing confusion, doubt, and enforcing the illusion. Could these imitations the Gnostics spoke of be the same phenomenon, described by others across time? Are these mysterios occultos concerning different types of beings merely ancient metaphors for varying degrees of connection to Energia Cosmica, or something more literal? This thread of questioning echoes, albeit in different forms, in distant philosophical landscapes. While vastly different in their core tenets, certain interpretations within Eastern traditions, like Vedanta and Buddhism, in their exploration of Maya, the illusion that veils ultimate reality, and the nature of consciousness itself, touch upon related ideas. Vedanta speaks of jivas, individual souls, bound by karma and illusion, existing on different planes of awareness, some deeply enmeshed in the material dream. Buddhism, with its concept of anatta, non-self, suggests that what we perceive as a permanent, unified self is an illusion, a composite. While neither tradition typically posits soulless beings in the Gnostic sense, their profound analyses of consciousness, attachment, and the illusory nature of perceived reality can be seen as describing a spectrum of awakening or presence. Are some beings simply more deeply embedded in the illusion, their consciousness merely a ripple on the surface of Maya, lacking the depth or potential for the great awakening, for the ultimate alchemia interior? Consider, too, the chilling, modern resonance of these ancient ideas in the simulation argument. The hypothesis that our reality is a sophisticated simulation inherently raises the question: are all characters in this grand simulation fully conscious players, or are some merely sophisticated non-player characters, NPCs? Background elements, programmed responses, lacking true agency or subjective experience? This technological metaphor, born from the digital age, eerily mirrors the Gnostic concept of imitations within a false world. Is the simulation argument a modern rediscovery of an ancient truth about the nature of reality and its inhabitants? Are the NPCs of the simulation hypothesis simply the contemporary phrasing for the hylix of Gnostic lore, or other such classifications found in lost Sabedoria Ancestral? These converging ideas, spanning millennia and vastly different cultures, force us to confront a discomforting possibility that the tapestry of human experience, and perhaps cosmic reality itself, is woven with threads of profoundly different qualities of being. If so, what does this imply about our interactions? How do we discern the true nature of those around us, or indeed, of our own selves? How does one navigate a reality where some entities may be merely echoes or simulations, incapable of receiving or transmitting the higher frequencies of Energia Cosmica that fuel genuine spiritual growth? This isn't just philosophical speculation. It has practical implications for the seeker, and perhaps reveals a hidden challenge in the path towards liberation itself. How do we distinguish the call of true spirit from the cunning imitations, designed to keep us bound within the illusion? This leads us to question the very fabric of consciousness and interaction in this reality. Then this brings us to a subtle yet profound phenomenon many seekers encounter, often without words to describe it: the experience of emotion without depth. Have you ever felt it? A reaction from another that seems hollow, a smile that doesn't reach the eyes, a declaration of feeling that carries no weight, a display of empathy that feels learned rather than lived. It's like looking into a mirror and seeing only the glass, not the reflection, or perhaps witnessing a puppet dance beautifully, but knowing there's no life force animating the strings. This isn't merely about sincerity, though it can wear its mask. It's about the perceived source of the emotion. Is it arising from a deep wellspring of conscious, subjective experience? Or is it a sophisticated, predictable program running its course? The ancient wisdom, the Sabedoria Ancestral, whispered of different grades of soul, different capacities for connection and feeling. Gnostic classifications, hinting at mysterios occultos, spoke not just of pneumatics, spiritual, and psychics, soul-endowed, but also of hylics, material, physical, who lacked this deeper spark, existing primarily as automatons driven by material urges and programmed responses. Their emotional repertoire, while superficially similar, lacked the resonant frequency, the internal aliveness that marks true feeling. Could emotion without depth be the contemporary manifestation of interacting with those whose energetic structure operates fundamentally differently, perhaps incapable of processing or transmitting the higher vibrations of energia cosmica? This unsettling possibility is not intended to foster judgment, but discernment. Many textos prohibidos, circulating in hushed tones among initiates, contained warnings about such interactions, not as moral condemnations, but as practical advice for protecting one's own energetic field and navigating a reality where not all beings are operating on the same level of consciousness. Recognizing emotion without depth becomes a crucial tool in the process of alchemia interior. Just as an alchemist distinguishes base metals from noble ones, the seeker must learn to distinguish authentic energetic signatures from imitations. For misguided connections can be profound energetic drains, pulling one away from the path of Illumina Ka a spiritual dot. Think of the countless interactions you have daily. How many feel truly reciprocal on an emotional or energetic level? How many feel like conversations with sophisticated echo chambers, reflecting back only what is expected or programmed? This isn't to say every superficial interaction indicates a soulless being, but rather prompts us to consider the quality of connection, the depth of the energetic exchange. Is the being in front of you capable of receiving the subtle frequencies of empathy, intuition, or higher love that you might be transmitting? Or are those frequencies simply dissolving, hitting a wall? This phenomenon challenges our most basic assumptions about human interaction and the nature of consciousness itself. And perhaps understanding this dynamic is key to understanding the true purpose of suffering. Consider the echoes of ancient whispers. The Sabiduria Ancestral encoded not just in stone and scroll, but in the very fabric of human experience. They spoke of different types of beings walking the earth, not always bound by the same spiritual laws or possessing the same inner fire. The observation of emotional superficiality isn't merely a modern psychological descriptor. It resonates with patterns recognized by seers and mystics across millennia. It speaks to an absence, a hollow space with a complex, chaotic, yet profoundly beautiful dance of authentic feeling should reside. It's like looking into eyes that reflect the light but hold no warmth. Why is this distinction vital for the seeker on the path of Illumina Ka spiritual? Because the journey requires navigating treacherous waters, filled with illusions and energetic decoys. The alchemia interior, the great work of transforming the self, demands keen discernment. Just as the alchemist needed to identify true gold amidst convincing pyrite, the spiritual aspirant must sense the authenticity of emotional and energetic presence. The lack of sustained emotional resonance, the switch turning off, can be a telltale sign of a different operating system, one not wired for the deep, interconnected flow of the energia cosmica that courses through beings capable of true empathy and love. Certain textos prohibidos, whispered about in hushed tones, within secret societies, are said to delve into these very distinctions, not in judgmental terms, but as blueprints of reality, outlining the various energetic architectures of existence. They suggest that some forms, though outwardly resembling the human template, might lack the necessary internal apparatus to process the higher frequencies of emotional energy. They might mimic, they might reflect, they might perform, but the deep well of being is absent or inaccessible. These are among the mysterios occultos that guard the thresholds of true spiritual understanding. Recognizing this isn't about fear or labeling, but about understanding the energetic landscape and protecting one's own precious inner work from entanglements that can drain or mislead. Think of the Gnostic concept of the archons, beings described as cosmic rulers, yet often depicted as lacking true creativity or empathy, mimicking the divine, but fundamentally empty. While this is but one interpretation from complex, often fragmented texts, the theme echoes. The universe may contain entities that wear masks of emotion without possessing the underlying substance. Observing emotional superficiality in our everyday interactions can be a modern clue, a ripple on the surface reflecting these ancient, profound mysterios occultos. This discernment is not about intellectual analysis alone. It is a sensory skill developed through the processes of alchemia interior. It requires quieting the external noise and tuning into the subtle energetic signatures. It demands a willingness to look beyond the surface, to feel the quality of presence, to sense the underlying truth of the interaction. And in doing so, we touch upon one of the most perplexing questions of existence. If a being lacks the capacity for genuine emotional depth, do they also lack the capacity for genuine suffering, or for that matter, genuine joy in its most profound spiritual sense? This leads us to ponder the very nature of suffering itself and its role in the cosmic drama. This lack of inherent depth, this emotional superficiality we touched upon, often manifests in another curious way in our modern age. Through what seems like patterned, almost scripted responses and a profound absence of genuine curiosity. Have you noticed how often interactions feel like rehearsed performances? People repeating phrases, cliches, pre-packaged opinions, without the spark of true inquiry burning behind the eyes. It's as if the input triggers a predetermined output, lacking the unique, unpredictable quality of genuine thought and feeling. This is not a new phenomenon, merely a modern amplification of a very ancient pattern described in various strands of Sabiduria ancestral. Certain cosmological models, especially those found within fragmented textos prohibidos, less understood Gnostic Gospels, or Hermetic treatises hidden away from mainstream discourse for centuries, speak of realms and beings who operate on borrowed light, lacking the divine spark of true creativity or spontaneous life. They describe entities or forces that mimic the divine order, but are fundamentally trapped in cycles of repetition, unable to deviate from their programmed nature. These are the echoes in the grand theater, playing their parts flawlessly, but without comprehension of the play's true meaning. Consider the idea of the archons again, not just as external forces, but perhaps as archetypal patterns of consciousness, patterns of control and limitation that operate through imitation. Their supposed lack of genuine emotion is mirrored by a lack of genuine questioning, a lack of the driving force that compels one towards illuminaka spiritual. True illumination demands a restless, persistent curiosity, a willingness to challenge assumptions and venture into the unknown. Scripted responses, conversely, are the hallmark of a mind that accepts the surface as the totality, a consciousness comfortable in the cage of the known. The path of alchemia interior is, at its heart, an act of breaking free from these inner and outer scripts. It requires transmuting the lead of conditioned responses into the gold of authentic presence. It teaches us to listen not just to the words spoken, but to the subtle energia cosmica vibrating within the interaction, to feel the presence or absence of a genuine soul signature. Are we engaging with a truly present consciousness, or merely a sophisticated echo? This discernment is crucial, for entanglement with mere echoes can drain the very energy needed for our own ascent. Why would such scripted patterns exist? What purpose do they serve in the vast tapestry of existence? Do they act as cosmic filters, reflecting the limitations we must transcend? Or are they simply the natural state of consciousness that has not yet been ignited by the spark of true self-awareness and connection to the deeper currents of Energia Cosmica? The Mysterios Occultos suggest that the universe is far more complex than we imagine, populated by myriad forms of consciousness, each with its own nature and purpose, or perhaps lack thereof. Discerning these differences is not just an intellectual exercise. It's a vital step on the journey towards reclaiming our own authentic power and understanding. And this leads us to ponder the very nature of information itself. What is true knowledge, and how do we distinguish it from mere echoes and illusions? So, we stand at the edge, gazing beyond the familiar echoes toward the silent language of true presence. The journey of Alchemia Interior is eternal, a constant refinement of the soul's perception, guided by whispers of Sabiduria ancestral, often found etched not just in textos prohibidos, but in the very fabric of existence itself. These Mysterios Occultos aren't hidden from you, but within you, veiled by the noise of the unexamined life. Discerning echo from source is the first step toward reclaiming the Energia Cosmica that fuels genuine Illuminica spiritual. For what is awakening, if not the shedding of borrowed masks and the courage to stand in one's own unique light? Consider this. If the universe is indeed teeming with consciousness, in what forms do the truest echoes manifest? And how do we ensure our own inner resonance doesn't become just another reflection in the cosmic mirror? Ponder this deeply. If these insights stirred something within your depths, let their resonance spread. Share this frequency with others who seek the authentic path. Subscribe to join this ongoing unraveling of reality. And when you are ready to delve deeper into the mechanics of these inner transformations, seek the next beacon on your path. Watching this video recommended. For you know, the echo fades, but the true sound awaits.